Good evening, dear audience. This is my second program in English, but it is also my 101st program in Spanish. As I said in the previous program, the Latin name of the program is Buenos Recuerdos, Good Memories, and the English one is And a Time to Smile. The Spanish name does not imply any inclination for melancholic stories, and the English title does not imply any inclination for comedy. It is a program that deals with literature, philosophy, humor, and real life. In this occasion, I would like to stress the fact that 101 programs makes an interesting one because, as you may all recall, there's a famous book in our bookshelves called The 101 Nights or The 100 Nights and One Night, a book that in the English-speaking world is also known as the Arabian Nights. This book teaches us that short storytelling may save our lives. What? I obtained a degree in life saving from the International Red Cross, and they never told me that I could avoid swimming in rescuing my victims. Did I go nuts? Just a bit. Aren't we all a bit nuts in this very strange world we are living in? How can a book save a life? Forgive me for some seconds, but before answering this question, let me remind you that Alexander the Great would only go to sleep after listening to a story told by his own short storytellers. There were no radios, TVs, smartphones, YouTubes, or clonazepam at the time. My program in Spanish started much later, 101 weeks ago, so it was no use for Alexander. By the way, why name a book 1001 and not 1000 or 999? Well, will you believe me? 1000 makes one feel that the series is complete and that nothing else is needed or can be added, while 999 makes you feel that there's something missing. On the other hand, 1001 makes you feel that you've reached the whole number, but simultaneously that you have started a new journey. But let's return to the book's ability to save lives. The main character in the story is Princess Sherazade, who offers herself to marry a criminal king ruling over India and China called Shahryar, who kills a virgin at night because his wife had been unfaithful to him. Sherazade knows how to avoid her own death by telling interesting stories to Shahryar and leaving them unended so that he decides to leave her execution for the following day by the time he knows the end of the story. Nevertheless, Sherazade is too sharp to reach a very end, and she never stops immediately, and that story becomes a new unended story. Perhaps that is the reason why some of us tell endless stories or for telling never-ending stories. But let us begin in the beginning. My name is Osvaldo Peusner, and I'm the conductor of this radio program that will be broadcast every Saturday from 8:30 to 9 p.m. in Buenos Aires, 7:30 to 8 p.m. in Boston, and will be included in YouTube format some hours later. Bruno Barrios is in charge of all technical operations at the studio. The previous half an hour program is mine too and should be saying the same things in Spanish. Of course, this is not true because it cannot be true. Each language leads you through its own paths, and normally these paths never coincide. Please allow me to thank my old chaps at MIT for listening to my first program in English. Frankly, you've surprised me. Jim Swanson, thank you again. Hopefully my English will be returning or coming. The first program was dedicated to the appearance of Confucius in China in the midst of a never-ending civil war among feudal lords. A strange place to start, you may say. I would too. Actually, I wanted my English program and my Spanish one run parallel to each other. They will. In the end, they will. But that will happen next Saturday. Today, I must explain why I did start with Confucius. Here it goes. I'm deeply concerned about Argentina's turmoil and the big gap that apparently divides my country into two parts. Something like this happened in the States before Lincoln. At the time there was a civil war between the North and the South, but Lincoln understood that a house divided against itself cannot stand. It does happen, in different ways, in many countries, sometimes even in the States. Oftentimes, a war takes place and many people die. So I decided to study with the audience some of the legal codes that were useful in structuring healthy societies in the past. 3 programs ago, I started with the Babylonian Code designed by King Hammurabi in 1750 before Christ. The next program was dedicated to Moses' 10 Commandments that appeared some 300 years later. And the third code I dealt with was Confucius' Moral Code that was applied some 700 to 800 years later. The first code ruled Mesopotamian Babylon and was a royal code. The second one ruled the Israelites after leaving Egypt and was a sacred code, and the third one ruled China and was a social code. The first one was designed by a king, the second one by God, the third one by a teacher and pedagogue. In order to honor these empires, we used or suggested to hear some music related to these lands and to these peoples. We remember Babylonians and Jews alike with Verdi's aria, Va Pensiero, Flyaway Thoughts from the opera Nabucco. I'm sure you'll identify the tune, and then I'll say a few words related to them. Let's start with the tune, please. Hebrew slaves remember their homeland, the Jordan River, the towers of Zion, and they cry. Of course they cry. They remember their beautiful and lost land. O mia patria si bella e perduta. This verse was used by Italians in strife many times, and this beautiful aria became a second national hymn in Italy and actually was used as recently as June 2011 against Premier Berlusconi. Going back to our story, everything is historically wrong in it. Our civilization starts in Mesopotamia. Babylon is Babel and blah blah, nonsense and confusion. Remember Noah's sons building the famous tower to reach heaven, and they are punished by God for their pride. Well, don't take the story too seriously. It was bad engineering, folks. These 3 sons didn't study at MIT, and they did not realize that when you add one brick on top of another and another on top of the last one, finally the pressure on the first brick becomes so much that it bursts and becomes dust. You may say that Babylonian dust was used by God in molding Adam. Yes, that is true, but Adam was born and gone long before Hammurabi's times. But these Jewish slaves don't have anything to do with Hammurabi because the Babylonian king involved was Nabucco or Nabucodonosor II or the Great, who defeated the Hebrews and took their upper classes to Babylon in order to build channels and gardens. Actually, 70 years later, Persian King Cyrus defeated Babylon and allowed religious freedom. So some Jews returned to Zion and some stayed in their Talmudic schools in Babylon and wrote a Babylonian Talmud. But since then, Jews have a prayer for the Persian king Cyrus. But aren't the Persians presently Iranians? Yes, but the world has changed a lot. How do the Jewish Ten Commandments become Christians' Two Commandments? What are the virtues and what are the risks involved in this conversion? But first, let's remember what the Ten Commandments in the book of the Exodus tell us. And God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, your male servant or your female servant, or your livestock or the sojourner who is within your gate. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male servant, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's. When you read these 17 verses in detail, you realize that the Ten Commandments may be more than 10. Thus, some addition was performed even within the Old Testament, that is, within Jewish tradition. And the commandments were read and numbered in the following fashion. 1. You shall have no other gods before me. 2. You shall not make for yourself a carved image. 3. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. 4. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 5. Honor your father and your mother. 6. You shall not murder. 7. You shall not commit adultery. 8. You shall not steal. 9. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. 10. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. But the Jewish Ten Commandments had to be modified by the Catholic Church. Of course, this did not happen during Jesus' lifetime, although he was concerned with his teaching, for after all he was a rabbi and worked like any other rabbi of his time. He had to become quite different. Not even the Sermon of the Mount would have been enough for him to become Christ. He had to live like Christ, and that was no easy matter. It was much later than the Jewish second commandment that did not allow carved images in churches was cancelled by the Catholic Church. And the following ones shifted upwards so that their numbers became different from those of the Old Testament and other Christian churches. For example, do not steal is the 8th commandment in Judaism and in all Christian churches, but is the 7th commandment in Catholicism. Furthermore, some of the commandments were slightly modified. Surprised? Yes, it is surprising because we all agree in that sacred books should be untouched from beginning to end. They are not the classics that can be modified. even Shakespeare and Cervantes, may be updated with due respect. In order to maintain the commandments number in 10, Catholic Church included a ninth commandment which is part of the 10th, and some versions include a new, most difficult ninth commandment: you will not consent to impure thoughts or desires. At this point, while we wait for Jesus to produce his own commandments, I invite you to hear some music to welcome his arrival to Jerusalem. Thank you, Mr. Handel. You always sound excellent. But the topic wasn't the Ten Commandments or even the differences between Jesus' teachings and those of other rabbis. There was a crisis in Judaism, and it was the time for a new paradigm for many people to believe in. And apparently, Jesus was the chosen among the chosen ones, at least for those who decided to follow him. Thus, we read from St. Mark the following most important chapter of the New Testament, that is 12:28. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debate. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked him, "Of all the commandments, which is the most important?" "The most important one," answered Jesus, "is this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. The second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these." When you read these two commandments, you find out that just as we found more than 10 commandments in the tables of the law, these two Christian commandments may look like three. The first one, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. The second one, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. And the third one, love your neighbor as thyself. But we're not going to argue about how to count these most important commandments. Was Christ's love the clue to the long existence of Christianity, or were the churches responsible for keeping the flock together? It is a long and difficult question that we'll try to answer in our next program with the help of the Grand Inquisitor, a chapter in Dostoevsky's Brother Karamazov, where God himself and the Grand Inquisitor get together for a chat on the topic. By now, I would simply say, like King Solomon himself, there's a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to reap, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to laugh and a time to weep, and a time to start a program and a time to end it. My best wishes to all of you. Thank you very much.